Welcome to episode 2 in the series of Stealing This Design, wherein we try to learn some things from great websites and not actually steal things, but trying to recreate some sections of website, and we try to recreate something, some section, some component, some view that we like out of it. And today we've got Diya Browser. So Diya Browser is a great website filled with great micro interactions, and it is surprisingly very short. So if you see, this website is really short, and I really like how this font works over here. So it goes from bolder to lighter and it repeats. That is a great touch. The gradient at the back is a great touch. The circular arc is also a nice touch. And once you hover and you move your mouse pointer, you will see these blocks are actually moving. Now this is called Parallax. We'll try to recreate this as well, but for a very specific component. I mean, we are not going to create everything out of here to recreate one component, and we are trying to add Parallax there. That is one thing that we need to do. But this website stands out, and I wanted to look at this website and comment down below what do you like about this. This I've picked from the comments itself, so we are going to recreate the hero section of it. This website stands out because first is the white spaces. You see there are a lot of tasteful white spaces. Again, in the bento grids there are white spaces again, and you'll see there are not very stark animations, but a few which stands out. For example, the scroll animation for features. So if you scroll, this thing sticks, and once you are over that section, it expands and it also tells you what the description of that feature is. This happens, you can also click. So this is also a nice touch. If you're watching this video, we are not going to create this, but this is a homework for you. I've already taught it in one of the previous videos on how you can do it. If you can do it, there is nothing like it. Great micro interaction right there. This bento is tasteful. These are videos which I'm totally against. You could have coded it up as well and animated it. That way it is more extensible for the developer to actually work with. Tomorrow, if you want to change something inside of this skeleton or illustration or a video or a live animation, you could do so if it is configurable. Right now it is a video. I checked it. 2 fonts, display and body. So for example, if you see, this font is a bit different than this font. Now you can also do it, have display font for headings, subheadings, and for body text you can use a different font so that it establishes a different hierarchy or for the user to actually skim through. So this is what we have right here. We are going to create this section, this entire section. We are going to drill it down, but then again we'll have to write what are all the different sections, and this is what I'm going to do right now. First is font animation, mouse move, parallax. Now as a design engineer, it is your role to nail the details inside of it. If you see, if I'm moving this, bottom ones are moving fast, top ones are moving slow. Background, radial gradient is another nice touch. So you see at the background, this is a radial gradient. Let's get right into the video, and before we even start, make sure you like this video and make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you want me to drill down more such websites, do comment about what website you want me to drill down next, and I'll be making a video on that. As a matter of fact, this website, the Diya Browser website, is also taken from one of the comments. So shout out to the person who suggested that. This is a great website to actually look at and browse through. Let's get right into the video. So this is our hero demo component. So if I go, this is what you see right now. Now I'm actually going to start with the navbar first, and I'll be very fast with the code because you've already seen my Tailwind series. I do not want to bore you with all the other details. So let's get started. Class name would be hscreen width full bg red 500, so that you see where we are right now. I want to basically first construct the navbar. So I'll call it nav, also write const nav return nav item. Now this navbar will be fixed, and I want to create exactly like this. So I'll need to have access to the browser's logo right over here. I can just go here, edit as HTML, copy this, close this one right over here, and come back over here. I'll paste this. Logo would be this, and actually I want it to be size 20. So logo, first thing is what we're going to import as logo. Then we'll have a class name of flex item center, justify center, and gap would be 4. So you see this nav item over here, maybe 20 is a bit more, maybe 10 would do. So we do it with 10. Now we need links, so I'll just simply have ahrefs, and the first link right over here is called what's new. So it'll be what's new, and I want to have some class name. Class name would be text base font medium and text neutral 700. So you see this is what we get. Now firstly what I'll do is I'll copy this and paste this here. We have security, and the third one is introducing reports. What is the problem? A tag. Cool. This is what we have now. I also want to make it fixed. Inset x0 width fit. Top would be 10. P would be 2, rounded would be 2xl, bg white. Border neutral 200. Shadow can be lg and z index can be 50. So now what you have here is weird. mx auto. So this is now rightly centered. I need more spacing over here. Maybe I can have an mr4 right over here, because we need to nail down the optics. Not necessarily it is right to use geometry. For example, if two buttons or a button's text and icon are not aligning optically, you have to align them optically, because if you have same set of spacing on the left and the right, might not look optically correct. For example, is exactly right when it comes to padding, but it is not looking optically correct. So you have to do modifications like these. With this, we have our navbar ready. Nothing fancy there. Looks decent. Maybe I can reduce down on the padding in the top part of it. Maybe I can make it top 8 instead. And it is going to look decent. Yeah, this is fine. I'm not going to work more on it. Now I want to create this section of it. Start creating our hero section. Hero section would be h1, and the copy says the browser that works with you. All right. So it is going to be the browser that works with you. Few things that I want to have right over here. First is a class name, text 8xl, so that is super big. And I want to restrict maybe the size, so I'll do it in an outer div and also call it relative. 10 flex, w full, max width 5xl, mx auto, z0 overflow hidden. And it'll be flex, okay. Flex call, item center, justify center. Flex is already there, so I'll remove it and I will wrap this right over here. Right, this is what we have. Text center, tracking would be tight, so that you see right over here. I also want to give some padding over here. I'll give pt84, so that it is nicely right over here. Browser that. Now we want to match it with the design that we see on Dia, and this works actually has to animate. I'm not sure why this weird spacing is there, but I'll give it maybe. So this is fine, the browser that works with you. And I want to use a different font. All right, so this is what we have. Now I want different font for works, but I'm going to go ahead and do it entirely for this. For font, I'm going to use a different font. It's called source serif, const source serif, and it'll be source serif 4, which I'm going to import from next Google. Put in subsets would be Latin. Now this is standard syntax if you want to import a font from next font. Weight I want to keep variable, because I actually want to switch the weight of it. So now if I want to do this, I'll write a function. Now if I want to actually animate it, I really want to split the characters. For example, if we got works right over here, W would be capital, and I want to split it and I want to animate it separately. I'll write a function for it. I'll call it work function, and I'll return motion dot span. I'll quickly import motion from here, from motion react. All right, this is what we have. Now if I want characters, I'll be calling them chars. So const chars would be simple of works. I can split it like this, that would work. And I want to map these chars into a motion span. So this is what I'm going to do right here, and I'll do chars dot map, not cars, chars map char index, and I'm going to split a motion div or a motion span, and I'll output char. Now I'm going to have some styling over here. First would be the key would be char, and class name would be cn. So here we want to pass the font class name that we have right over here. We are going to use first is cn, and we'll import it. First would be inline block, and we also want to pass source serif dot class name. This is what we have. Now if you see right over here, now if I import this work function instead of this, you will see this is what we have. Maybe I'll just put it outside over here. Oh, cn is not imported somehow. Why is it working over here then? Cool. Now you see the font is different. That is exactly what we wanted. Maybe we don't want it here, so we'll remove it from here. So this works is a bit different, and I can also maybe have a better tracking here. It is much closer. Maybe text neutral 800. This can be text black. we actually have some hierarchy going on over here. This looks better. Works is now what we have. Now we want to animate this part of it. So let's go ahead and do it. Initial would be font weight 400, and animate we want to pass in font weight in an array of 400, 900 and 400. Let's see how this performs. But before that, I want to also give it a transition of duration 2. Let's see how it is. So it animates and it goes off. It bolds it and then back to normal. This is not what we want. We want some delay, and that is what we are going to do. Ease would be, now we can do a spring transition as well, but I'll keep it simple here. Ease and out. Delay would be index into 0.4. This is, I've already created this component, so it is easier for me. So now if I refresh, you see first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and it goes off. That is what we wanted. Maybe it is a bit slower. So now this works. 0.2 is fine. I want this to repeat till infinity. Repeat delay would be 2. So now once you refresh, you'll see you have this animation going on over here. This is exactly what this does, except their font is better. This was a paid font. I didn't work much on it. This is exactly what we wanted. Maybe 900 is a bit more. Maybe 700 will be a bit sleeker. This is a bit smoother. So this is what I like. I like what I see, and this is what they have right over here. Secondary, so this is done. Let's also create our p tags. Diya surfaces, whatever diya surfaces, good for diya. Text center, max width, SMMX auto, text neutral 700, text Excel font medium. You see now we have got this, maybe this a bit more, maybe this can be 500, and I'm going to give it an empty of 10. So it is right below, how much below? Actually a bit more, 16. So this is what we have. Now let's go ahead and create our button. So button would be a simpler one. Class name would be width maybe 84, px4, py2, rounded 2xl, bg black, text white, text lg, font would be medium, and empty would be 8, and download diya. This is what we have, and this is how our button looks. Maybe we can have a bit more on the Y side, and we get this download diya. Maybe size is a bit more. We can reduce it down to 72. Download diya. This works. Now you see here. Now if you inspect element and see how they have done it, they've basically taken this button, and inside of it they have this. They have a blur and a backdrop. This is absolutely precision. Now if I remove it, you will see that thing is gone. If I have it again, you see this is what we get. The hollow or the blur backdrop. I'm not going to do it with another element positioned inside. I would rather use a box shadow for that. And the way you can do it is have a box shadow of 0px, 80 pixels and 10 pixels, and var color blue 500. Now if you have this, you will see you get this right over here. Y is overflow. All right. This is what you see. Now this is basically nothing. This is the blur value. If I keep it 0, you'll see it is spread across 10 pixels, but it is not blurred. So if I have 80 pixel of blur, it will be blurred out and it will be spread out by 10 pixels. Now if I have 0 pixels, it will be spread out less, but still the blur is there. I still want it to be subtle, so I'll tone it down by 50 opacity. So you still see the hollow, which is over there, but it works. There is another shadow inside of the button, which I observed right now, which is on top of it. You can do it with another set of box shadow right over here, but you'll have to remove this and instead make it 200 and have 0 pixels, 0 pixels. So you see the top bar, which is white, that is what we have done. And now instead of white, I'll make it maybe neutral 500. So it is a bit lighter. So this line that you see, I'm not being able to zoom in. So the line that you see right here, subtle detail of a shadow, and this is the whole body text of the browser. Now the things which are remaining from here are, one, the background gradient, second, this arc, and third, the parallax. So let's get done with the background gradients first, so it will be easier. And I'm going to call it gradient and create a component around gradient. All right. So if you inspect this Diya browser, which is what I did, this entire thing is a radial gradient. I'll show it to you over here right in a bit. actually this. So the thing that going on now, they're animating this background gradient. We are not going to animate it. They are using a set of colors which you see in the style tag right over here. Now, what is a radial gradient? It is a gradient that you can animate, or it is a gradient that you can apply radially as to mimic a circle. So gradient. So if you see this gradient, this is a radial gradient which has some blue and some white. It goes radially outside. It is not linear, which goes from left to right or top to bottom. It goes radially in a circular fashion. You can create these similar radial positions or radial gradients and can have various radial gradients going on, which I'm going to show you right in a second. Let me go ahead and create it for you. But before that, I want to wrap this in a position absolute inset 0 Z0 overflow hidden, so that we don't go out of bounds. Since this is a background gradient, we should be able to work with that. Let's go to the gradient folder, and now I'm going to write exactly what Dia people have written. I'm going to take their colors, but I'm going to style it a bit differently. Absolute left 1/2 minus translate x 1/2, so it is nicely centered. X 1/2 minus translate y 1/2. Scale, I'm going to scale it up a bit, and top, I'll tell you in a second. 65 Vmax, really large box to work with. Background image, simply a radial gradient. Now it goes from something to something, and there are various different background stops which are already available. I've already copied the values from the browser. So if you see right here, I've taken this one right over here. I've simply copied these values which are there, the RGB values, so that I can take the colors exactly how they have it. And I'm going to paste that value, and I'm going to paste this RGBA value. So now if I go back here, you see this gradient gets applied. This is a radial gradient. Now because we have the size to be this and this and not 100, it won't get applied somehow. I don't know even why it is not going to applied. But because of this width and height, we have this humongous overflow hidden. So now you see our overflow is also hidden, and here it also should be overflow hidden, and here also I need to put overflow hidden, so it is nicely hidden. So this is what you get. This is exactly their gradient which I've taken. I am going to blur it down to 40 pixels. Now blur, and you get this nice glow. Now you can tweak with the blur values, but this is what they have. If I align that arc on top of it, which we are going to create next, that is when you will see how this hero section actually stands out. Super neat. There are a few gradient stops. If I remove, for example, this stop, you will see this is a different color. If I remove this stop, you will see spanning more. Basically, you can have any and every color. You can tweak these values and you'll get that curved gradient. You can have different gradient stops. You can maybe have 2, you can maybe have 20, depending upon the design. Get to these gradients. Now you can use tailwind colors as well for this. For example, if I use var black or color black, this can be var color blue 500. This can be var color red 500, and you will see it behaves in exactly that way. I sort of like their color, so I want to stick with their colors, and this is what we get. Let's move on to creating the next part, which is the arc of it. Now arc is relatively simple, and for that I'll create another component inside of this. I'm going to call it arc, and it'll be simple. Class name would be absolute. Top, I want to be having 200 pixels. Left 1/2 aspect can be square. Minus translate x 1/2. Rounded can be full. BG can be white. Now if I save this, you see nothing because we haven't given any width to it. So width can be 150 Vmax would do. And you see this browser or this arc comes into place. If I drill it down to 50, it'll be a shorter arc, which looks tasteful as well in my opinion. But if you have it 130, we'll be having exactly what the people have. And this is what this arc is all about. Now that I see not the, it is a browser. Awesome. We are almost near. Not exactly that, because that requires a lot of work, but in single video that is enough. Last moving part of the puzzle is these containers. So that is what I'm going to do exactly right here. I'm going to create containers. I'm going to maybe create this component, a simple one, so that I can replicate it. I'm going to call it floating card, and we need many of them. So I'm going to go ahead and create this floating items over here. I'm going to create, so this floating items is a container actually, and this container will house all the 4 different floating items that we want to create. So I'm going to create const floating items, and it will be simple, return div class name absolute insert 0 z50 pointer events none, or even if you don't want to have it, that is fine. But inside of it, I'm going to create a floating card component, and we are going to have 4 of these, wherein we are going to pass classes const floating card. Now it will be a simple card, but I'm going to create a motion.div, turn motion.div, while hover would be hover, initial would be, so initial would be initial, hover, and inside of that we are going to create our first card. Before that, I also want to position it absolute so that it floats somewhere. Absolute top maybe 40, right would be 32. These are random values, I'm just experimenting. P can be 6, rounded can be XL, BG wide by 50, backdrop blur SM, shadow LG, border neutral 200, Z can be 50. Now this is what we have right over here. All right, inside of this I want to have a P tag, which is going to say what these people are saying. Design, show and tell in 14 minutes. So design, show and tell in 14 minutes. And I want to style it a bit differently. Text LG, text neutral 800, font can be medium. Now if you see what we have right over here, neutral 200. This is what we have. Shadow can be MD and shadow can be black by 50. That's a lot. Shadow can be 5. This is fine. This is fine. This can work. Height can be 60. Top can be 80. So it is right over here, exactly where I wanted it to be. And this can be a span tag, text neutral 600, so that it is a bit muted. I don't see muteness. So this is what we have, and this is what we wanted. This is what we have. Now this can be text SM max width 60, text neutral 500. So you see, this is what we have. Empty can be 2, 400. I also want to have a flex box, wherein flex call item start gap 2 and flex gap 2 item center, and I want to pass an image tag. Source would be https assets.eternity.com, avatars shared cn.webp, class name would be size 4 rounded full. I'm going to give it a p tag. Class name would be text xs, text neutral 400, and it is going to say chat cn. This is what we have. Empty2, so it is nicely spaced out. Again, I want one more, maybe one guy. Who's that guy? It's me. So it is me again. Once I hover over it, I want to see this moving. So for that, I'm going to convert this. Already is a motion div, so I'm going to pass in some variants. Initial would be height 0 and opacity 0. Animate would be height would be auto, opacity would be 1. Now this is here. If I refresh it and hover, it is not working. Okay, because while hover has to be animate, because animate prop has to match over here. Now if I hover over this, still not. Pointer events none. That is why it is not working. All right. Pointer events none was there, hence it was not working. So that is fine. I also want to have class name of overflow hidden. So once I have this, this works. This is nice, super cute, looks decent. And maybe I want to have a transition over here. Duration would be 0.2, ease would be ease out. So that works, that is snappier. And we have our thing going on. This is exactly what we wanted. And now we are going to replicate it. So I'm going to pass it a class name here of top, maybe 80, right would be 60. And I want this to take a class name Class name would be a string, and here I want to pass a class name prop. I want to remove top and right from here, and I want it to come from there, and class name should be optional, and rest are aligned over here, which we don't want, so we want to style them differently. 40 left 32, that is fine. Class name and bottom 32. So you have got these aligned right over here. This can be 80 though, not 80, maybe 72, so they are a bit differently styled. So this is what we have. Works for me. And I'm gonna also give a layout ID, use ID, and give a layout ID to this floating item ID. So once we have it over here, it nicely animates. This is what I like about it. I also want to have a will change transform. Since this is hover, we are going to not sparsely, we are going to use it very rarely on hover, and we can have this will change transform right over here going on, which is super nice to work with. Now, last piece of the puzzle which is remaining is once I move my mouse, it should have some parallax. That is exactly what we are going to create right now. And this, we can do it two ways. Either we can bind a ref and use mouse move events, or we can have an event listener of mouse move entirely for this. I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to add an event listener of mouse, and then we can move these little boys around. Sounds so wrong, but this is what it is. And that is what exactly I'm going to do. So for that, I'm going to go right over here. I'm going to use motion value. So const target X would be use motion value of 0. And since we want to move it in the Y direction as well, const target Y would be use motion value 0. Now we want to get client height and width, or inner height, inner width. For that, we are going to use some mathematics. I took help of AI, but I can explain it to you how you can do it as well. Before that, we also want to have some spring animations once they move. So I'll wrap them up right over here. Const spring X would be use spring target X, and we want to have some spring config going on. Stiffness would be 90, damping would be 18, 19 is also fine, but 18. Mass would be 0.12. I'm going to call it const config would be simply this, and I'm going to import use spring. I'm going to pass this config right over here. Similarly, spring Y can be use spring target Y and config. We have our configurations ready. Now let's get ahead and get our mouse pointer values. For that, unfortunately, we'll have to use use effect. I'm sorry about that, but for the sake of this demo, we are going to use this X and target Y. As and when they change, we are going to use this. On mouse move, we can also bind, but for simplicity, let's use an event listener. Or on mouse move would be E mouse event. And I'm going to bind an event listener for this. So window.add event listener, mouse move would be on mouse move, and passive is going to be true. And also I want to write the return statement, return window.remove event listener mouse move, and we want to remove it. Now we have got our event listener. Let's get into width is going to be window.inner width, or we are going to bind it to 1, or optionally it is going to be 1. That is the failsafe. Const height is going to be window.inner height, or it is going to be 1. Target x.set e.client x divided by width into 2 minus 1. Going to wrap this up. And const y set would be e dot client y divided by height into 2 minus 1. Finally, I want to do target x dot set, which I can simply do, and I can just call it x set, and target y dot set would be y set. Now, once we have x and y values, we can pass down those values into this floating card component. And we're going to call it spring X and spring Y, which we already have because target X and target Y we are setting here. And to use spring animation with it, we are going to pass in spring X and spring Y. Spring X is going to be spring x, spring y, spring x, spring y. I'm going to go to floating component and I'm going to pass in spring x, spring y. Both will be motion values. Motion values we are going to import from motion value, and here style would be x would be spring x, y would be spring y. Once we have this, come over here and refresh, and this moves. That is exactly what we wanted, but that is not the exact detail that we want. All right. We want these top ones to move slower, bottom ones to move faster. We are going to pass in a depth parameter, and depth we are going to pass in as a number, and here const value x would be use transform spring x, and you can pass in a function and return we get v into depth. Similarly, value y would be use transform. We don't have use transform. V and it will be spring y, and we are going to pass in value x and value y. It is 1. So everything moves nice in similar space. 0.1, 0.4 and 0.4. You will see the top ones move slower, but the bottom ones move faster. That is what depth does. Basically, we are toning down this value. If you get 1, we want 0.1, so that these move differently with different strengths. This is all mathematics, bro. I hate. But this is how you do it. This is how you move them differently. Now you can also have parallax factor, call it 100, and we have multiplied this over here with parallax strength factor. You can go ahead and change this value to 2, and they'll move very slow, almost negligible. Now if I create it to be 80 and I refresh it, you'll see they move a bit faster. Now you can drill down this value as well, change this value so that it moves differently. But this is exactly how you create that parallax effect. These move slower, but the bottom ones move faster. So you get this parallax effect. This is exactly how you nail down this part of them. Now they have got it really slow, which is exactly tasteful. I want it to be slow as well, so I'll maybe have it as 40. Refresh. Now it is very slow. Have different elements here, and you'll have exactly how the browser have done it. Background animation, you do it yourself. And this was it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two. Main thing about this series is you do not go ahead and publish this work as your own. You're doing this, you're trying to recreate a beautiful landing page to learn things like these: parallax, radial gradients, font transformations, all of these absolute positionings, navbar, fixed positionings. You are doing this to learn at the end of the day, and you are not doing this to rip off someone else's work. Do it for your own learning. Do it at local. Do not publish this work. Take a thing or two. For example, take this linear gradient right over here, change it completely, use it somewhere different, because linear or radial gradients, which are properties which can enhance your hero section or any section for that matter, if used tastefully. Thank you so much for watching this video. We are also doing a giveaway in which we are giving away 5 t-shirts. If you want to participate, do comment under this video and do like this video. If you have any suggestions for websites that you want me to recreate, do drop in the comments and I'll be happy to do so. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. तब तक के लिए bye. जय हिंद. बहुत काम करो, बहुत मेहनत करो. Next video में मिलता हूँ.